In the year 2247, humanity had reached a level of progress that once seemed impossible. Centuries of exploration and innovation had led to the mastery of faster-than-light travel, allowing humans to journey far beyond their home planet. The stars were no longer distant specks in the night sky, but destinations waiting to be explored. Countless ships ventured into the unknown, mapping new worlds and encountering strange phenomena. Among these explorers was a starship named Solace, crewed by men and women who had dedicated their lives to uncovering the mysteries of the universe. Captain Ryan Cole stood on the bridge of the Solace, his sharp eyes scanning the view screen as the ship drifted through the vast emptiness of space. He was a man of quiet determination, known for his calm demeanor even in the most chaotic situations. Beside him sat Lieutenant Lisa Hart, her fingers dancing across the console as she analyzed data streaming in from the ship's sensors. Lisa was young but brilliant, with a knack for spotting patterns others might miss. Together they formed the backbone of the mission, a partnership built on trust and shared ambition. The Solace had been sent on what was supposed to be a routine deep space survey. Their objective was simple: chart unexplored regions of the galaxy and gather information about any anomalies they encountered. For weeks, the journey had been uneventful. The crew spent their days running diagnostics, maintaining equipment, and occasionally marveling at the breathtaking beauty of nebulae and distant suns. But today, something unusual caught Lisa's attention. "Captain," she said, her voice tinged with excitement, "you're going to want to see this." Ryan turned toward her, raising an eyebrow. Lisa rarely sounded so animated unless she'd found something truly remarkable. She brought up a series of waveforms on the main screen, pointing to a faint but distinct signal embedded within the static. "It's not natural," she explained. "This is artificial." Ryan leaned forward, studying the patterns carefully. The signal was weak, almost drowned out by the background noise of space, but it was undeniably there. It pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat, carrying fragments of information encoded within its oscillations. "Can you clean it up?" he asked. Lisa nodded and got to work. Within minutes, she managed to isolate the signal and enhance its clarity. As the audio played back through the ship's speakers, the crew listened intently. At first, it sounded like random bursts of static, but then something emerged, a sequence of tones followed by a string of coordinates. The message was incomplete, fragmented, but one thing was clear. Someone or something had deliberately transmitted it. "This can't be coincidence," Ryan muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Whoever sent this wanted us to find it." The discovery sparked a flurry of activity aboard the Solace. Engineers and scientists gathered in the briefing room to discuss the implications. Some believed the signal could be a distress call from a stranded vessel, while others speculated it might be a lure, a trap set by an unknown entity. There was no shortage of theories, each more intriguing than the last, but one detail stood out above all else. The coordinates pointed to a region of space far outside human territory, a place where no Earth-based ship had ever ventured. "We should go," Lisa said firmly during the meeting. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and several members of the crew nodded in agreement. "Think about it. We've been searching for signs of intelligent life for decades. This could be our chance to finally make contact." Not everyone shared her optimism. Engineer Jake Monroe, a burly man with a perpetual scowl, voiced his concerns. "Or it could be a death trap," he countered. "We don't know what's out there. For all we know, those coordinates lead straight to some alien war zone." Ryan raised a hand to silence the growing debate. "We're here to explore," he reminded them. "That means taking risks, but we'll do it smartly. We'll approach cautiously, stay alert, and be ready for anything." With the decision made, the Solace adjusted its course and set off toward the mysterious destination. Days passed as the ship hurtled through hyperspace, the crew preparing for whatever lay ahead. Weapons systems were checked, shields reinforced, and emergency protocols reviewed. Tension hung thick in the air, a mix of anticipation and apprehension. No one knew what they would find when they arrived, but one thing was certain: they were about to step into the unknown. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Solace dropped out of hyperspace. Before them loomed a sight that left the Entire crew speechless. Suspended in the void was a massive structure unlike anything they had ever seen. It dwarfed the largest human-built stations, its surface shimmering with iridescent hues that shifted and danced in response to the light of a nearby dying star. The structure resembled a colossal sphere, interwoven with intricate designs that seemed to pulse with energy. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a monument to a civilization far older and more advanced than humanity. "What is that?" whispered Samantha Brooks, the ship's navigator, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. Ryan didn't answer immediately. His gaze was fixed on the structure, his mind racing with questions. Who, or what, had built it? What purpose did it serve? And why had they sent the signal? As if in response to their presence, the structure began to change. A section of its surface parted, revealing a glowing aperture that widened until it formed a perfect circle. From within, a beam of light shot forth, illuminating the solace. Then, without warning, a figure materialized before them, not physically but as a holographic projection. It towered over the ship, its form vaguely humanoid, but alien in every way. Its skin appeared to ripple like liquid metal, and its eyes glowed with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. "I am Kyle," the figure said, its voice resonating directly in their minds rather than through the ship's speakers. "You have entered forbidden space. Turn back now, or face the consequences." The words sent a chill down everyone's spine. Ryan stepped forward, addressing the being despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "We mean no harm," he said, choosing his words carefully. "We received your signal and came to investigate. We're explorers, not invaders." Kyle regarded them silently for a moment, as if weighing their sincerity. When he spoke again, his tone carried a note of sorrow. "Your kind has caused great destruction in the past. Your arrival brings only chaos and despair. Leave this place and do not return." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had traveled so far, risked so much, only to be met with hostility. But Ryan refused to give up. "We're not like the others," he insisted. "We seek understanding, not conflict. If you let us, we can prove it." For a long moment, Kale said nothing. Then, with a sigh that seemed to echo across the cosmos, he relented. "Very well," he said, "but know this. My people will be watching. One false move and you will regret stepping foot here." With that, the aperture expanded further, creating a pathway leading into the heart of the structure. The Solace moved forward cautiously, its crew bracing themselves for whatever awaited them inside. Little did they know their journey was only beginning, and the choices they made would shape the fate of the galaxy itself. The Solace glided slowly into the glowing aperture, its hull bathed in soft, pulsating light that seemed alive. The crew held their breath as they passed through the threshold, unsure of what lay ahead. Inside, the structure was even more awe-inspiring than it had appeared from the outside. The walls shimmered with intricate patterns that shifted and changed like living art, casting reflections across the ship's interior. It was as if the very fabric of the station responded to their presence, analyzing them with every passing second. Captain Ryan Cole stood at the helm, his hands gripping the controls tightly. His mind raced with questions, but he forced himself to remain calm for the sake of the crew. Lieutenant Lisa Hart sat beside him, her eyes wide with wonder, as she scanned the environment with the ship's sensors. "It's incredible," she murmured almost to herself. "This technology, it's beyond anything we've ever seen." Jake Monroe, the ship's engineer, leaned against the wall near the back of the bridge, arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't as easily impressed. "Yeah, sure, it's fancy," he grumbled, "but I don't trust it. This place feels like a trap waiting to snap shut." Ryan shot him a glance but said nothing. Jake had a point. There was no denying the tension in the air, but now wasn't the time for pessimism. They needed to stay focused. Samantha Brooks, the navigator, adjusted her seat slightly, her fingers hovering nervously over the console. She wanted to believe this was a moment of discovery, not danger, but Kale's ominous warning still echoed in her mind. As the Solace ventured deeper into the megastructure, The holographic figure of Kale reappeared before them. This time, however, he did not speak immediately. Instead, he observed the humans silently, his glowing eyes scanning each member of the crew as though trying to peer into their souls. The silence stretched on, growing heavier with each passing second. Finally, Kale spoke, his voice resonating directly in their minds once again. "You are curious creatures," he began, his tone measured but tinged with unease. "Your kind has always sought knowledge, often at great cost. Tell me, explorers of Earth, why do you venture so far from your home?" Ryan stepped forward, speaking clearly despite the knot forming in his stomach. "We came because we received your signal," he replied. "We thought it might be an opportunity to learn, to make contact with another intelligent species. We didn't come here looking for trouble." Kale tilted his head slightly, as if considering Ryan's words. Then, without warning, images began to flood the crew's minds. Visions of war-torn planets, crumbling cities, and burning skies flashed before their eyes. They saw fleets of ships clashing in epic battles, weapons unleashing devastation on a scale they could barely comprehend. Entire civilizations were wiped out in moments, reduced to ash and memory. The emotions tied to these scenes, fear, despair, anger, were overwhelming, leaving the crew shaken. "This is what follows in your wake," Kyle said, his voice carrying a weight of sorrow. "Time and again we have watched a species like yours rise to power, driven by ambition and greed. You conquer, you destroy, and you leave ruin behind. Your arrival here fills us with dread." Lisa gasped, clutching the edge of her console as the vision subsided. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. "That can't be true," she whispered. "Not all civilizations are like that. Humanity isn't like that anymore." Kale turned his gaze toward her, his expression unreadable. "You say you have changed," he said. "But how can we be sure? How do we know you will not repeat the mistakes of those who came before you?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswerable. Ryan clenched his jaw, searching for the right words. "We're not perfect," he admitted. "We've made mistakes in the past, terrible ones. But we're trying to do better. We've learned from our history, and we're working toward peace not just among ourselves but with others." For a moment, Kale seemed to consider this. Then, with a wave of his hand, the chamber around them transformed. The shimmering walls faded, replaced by a vast, open space filled with floating platforms. Each platform displayed detailed projections of artifacts, relics, and technologies from countless alien civilizations. Some of the items looked ancient, their surfaces worn with age, while others gleamed with cutting-edge sophistication. "This is our archive," Kyle explained. "Here, we preserve the knowledge of those who came before you. Many of these species were once great, powerful, and innovative, but they fell victim to their own hubris. Their thirst for dominance led to their downfall." Ryan stepped closer, studying one of the projections. It depicted a sleek weapon-like device surrounded by swirling energy fields. "What is that?" he asked, pointing to the image. Kyle hesitated before answering. "A tool of annihilation," he said grimly. "It belonged to a race known as the Zetherians. With it, they could unravel the fabric of reality itself. They used it to conquer entire star systems until their enemies banded together and destroyed them. Now, only this relic remains." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The implications were clear. Kyle's people feared humanity would misuse such power if given the chance. And yet, there was something else in his tone. A hint of vulnerability, perhaps even desperation. He wasn't just warning them. He was pleading with them to prove him wrong. "We're not asking for access to your archive," Ryan said carefully. "We just want to understand, to learn. Isn't that why you sent the signal in the first place? To see if we were worthy?" Kale regarded him silently, his glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "Perhaps," he admitted after a pause. "But understanding comes with responsibility. If you wish to proceed, you must demonstrate that you are capable of wielding knowledge wisely." With that, the platforms began to shift, rearranging themselves into a series of challenges. Each one represented a test designed to measure different qualities: cooperation, restraint, creativity, and empathy. Cale gestured toward the first platform where a complex puzzle awaited. "Begin," he commanded. "And remember, failure will not be tolerated." The crew gathered around the puzzle, their nerves taut but determination burning in their hearts. Lisa took the lead, examining the intricate mechanism with sharp eyes. It consisted of interlocking pieces that seemed to defy logic, shifting and changing as she attempted to solve it. Beside her, Jake muttered under his breath, clearly skeptical of the whole ordeal. "This is ridiculous," he said, crossing his arms. "How is solving some alien Rubik's Cube supposed to prove anything?" "It's not about the puzzle itself," Lisa snapped, her frustration bubbling over. "It's about how we approach it. Look, everyone needs to focus. If we work together, we can figure this out." Ryan nodded in agreement, stepping up to assist. Together, the team began experimenting with the puzzle, testing different combinations and strategies. At first, progress was slow, and tempers flared as mistakes piled up. But gradually, they found a rhythm, communicating openly and supporting one another. Even Jake softened somewhat, offering practical suggestions when prompted. After what felt like hours, they finally solved the puzzle. The pieces clicked into place with a satisfying hum, and the platform lit up in approval. Kyle observed their efforts with a neutral expression, neither pleased nor disappointed. "You have completed the first trial," he said simply. "But many more await. Do not grow complacent." One by one, the challenges grew increasingly difficult. Some required quick thinking, while others demanded patience and self-control. In one particularly harrowing test, the crew was placed in a simulated environment where resources were scarce. They had to decide whether to prioritize survival or share what little they had with virtual representations of other beings, the Yair. Decision weighed heavily on them, forcing them to confront their own values and biases. Through it all, tensions ran high. Arguments broke out, alliances shifted, and doubts crept in. Yet, despite the strain, the crew never gave up. They pushed, through exhaustion and frustration, determined to prove Cale wrong. Slowly but surely, they began to earn his reluctant respect. By the time they reached the final challenge, the atmosphere aboard the Solace had changed. The crew had grown closer, united by the trials they had faced together. As they prepared to tackle the last puzzle, Ryan turned to Cale, his voice steady and resolute. "We may not be perfect," he said, "but we're willing to try. That's what sets us apart. We're not afraid to admit when we're wrong, and we'll keep striving to do better. Give us a chance, Cale. Let us show you that humanity can be trusted." Cale studied him for a long moment, his expression inscrutable. Then, with a slight nod, he gestured for them to proceed. The final platform loomed before them, its surface etched with symbols that pulsed faintly in the dim light. Whatever secrets it held, the crew knew this was their last opportunity to prove themselves, to convince Cale that humanity deserved a place among the stars. As they stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead, the weight of the galaxies, expectations rested squarely on their shoulders. For better or worse, the fate of first contact now rested in their hands. The final platform loomed before the crew of the Solace, its surface shimmering with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves as they approached. Unlike the previous challenges, this one radiated an aura of gravity, as though it carried more significance than all the others combined. The symbols etched into its surface pulsed faintly, casting a soft glow that illuminated the chamber. Captain Ryan Cole exchanged a glance with his crew, silently urging them to stay focused. They had come too far to falter now. Kyle stood nearby, watching them with an unreadable expression. His glowing eyes followed their every move, studying their reactions with quiet intensity. "This is the culmination of your trials," he said, his voice resonating in their minds. "It will test not only your intellect, but your character. Choose wisely." With that cryptic warning, the platform came to life. A holographic projection rose from its center, forming a three-dimensional map of a star system. The system was unfamiliar, filled with planets orbiting a dying sun. At the heart of the map floated a single, pulsating sphere, a representation of the megastructure itself. Surrounding the sphere were smaller markers, each labeled with different scenarios: famine, disease, resource scarcity, environmental collapse, and war. This simulation represents the choices civilizations must make when faced with survival, Kale explained. You will be tasked with allocating limited resources to address these crises. However, there is a catch. No solution is without consequence. Every decision you make will ripple outward, affecting not only your own people but others as well. Ryan frowned, his mind already racing through the implications. This wasn't just a puzzle. It was a moral dilemma designed to reveal their true nature. He turned to his crew, seeking their input. We need to think carefully about this, he said. Our decisions could determine whether we pass or fail. Lisa Hart stepped forward, her sharp eyes scanning the projection. She was the logical thinker of the group, always quick to analyze data and propose solutions. We should prioritize saving lives first, she suggested. If we can stabilize the population, we can tackle the other issues later. Jake Monroe crossed, his arms shaking his head. That's short-sighted, he argued. If we ignore the environment or resources, we'll end up right back where we started. We have to fix the root problems, even if it means making tough calls. Samantha Brooks, the navigator, hesitated before speaking. Her voice was soft but firm. What if we try to balance everything? Spread the resources evenly so no one scenario gets worse? Ryan considered their suggestions, weighing the pros and cons of each approach. None of them were perfect, and all carried risks. Finally, he made a decision. We'll split the resources evenly for now, he said, but we'll monitor the outcomes closely and adjust as needed. If something starts spiraling out of control, we'll reassess. The crew nodded in agreement, and Lisa began inputting their choices into the simulation. As soon as she confirmed the allocation, the map shifted dramatically. The markers representing famine and disease dimmed slightly, indicating improvement. But those for resource scarcity and environmental collapse flared brighter. Meanwhile, the marker for war remained unchanged, pulsing ominously. It's not working, Jake muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. We're spreading ourselves too thin. We need to focus on one thing at a time. Ryan clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew Jake was right. They couldn't afford to waste time second-guessing themselves. All right, he said. Let's redirect most of our resources toward stabilizing the environment. If we fix that, it might give us breathing room to handle the rest. Lisa adjusted the settings accordingly, and the map responded immediately. The marker for environmental collapse dimmed significantly, while the others fluctuated unpredictably. Famine worsened, causing the crew to exchange worried glances. Disease also spiked, threatening to undo their progress entirely. It was clear that every choice came with trade-offs, forcing them to confront the harsh realities of leadership. As the simulation continued, tensions among the crew grew. Samantha advocated for diverting resources to alleviate famine, arguing that starving populations would inevitably lead to unrest. Jake countered that focusing on war prevention was more urgent, as conflict could escalate into chaos. Lisa tried to mediate, suggesting compromises that balanced competing priorities, but even her best efforts couldn't resolve the growing disagreements. Through it all, Ryan remained calm, guiding the team through the storm. He reminded them that failure was not an option, not just for their sake, but for the sake of humanity's future. We're not just solving a puzzle here, he said firmly. We're proving that we can handle responsibility, that we can work together even when things get messy. Keep pushing. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached a turning point. The crew decided to pool their remaining resources into addressing war, reasoning that preventing conflict would create stability needed to tackle the other crises. Lisa entered the final adjustments, and the map began to stabilize. One by one, The markers dimmed until the entire projection faded, leaving behind a serene image of the star system thriving once more. Kyle observed the outcome with a mixture of curiosity and approval. "You have completed the trial," he said, his tone neutral, but tinged with respect. "Though your path was fraught with difficulty, you persevered. Few who face this challenge succeed." The crew let out a collective sigh of relief, slumping against the walls of the chamber as exhaustion washed over them. They had done it. They had proven themselves capable of making difficult decisions without succumbing to selfishness or fear. But Ryan knew their journey was far from over. "Does this mean we've earned your trust?" he asked, meeting Cale's gaze directly. Cale paused, considering the question. "Trust is not easily given," he replied. "But you have taken the first step. There is still much for you to learn, however. My people have guarded this archive for millennia, preserving knowledge that could either save or destroy countless lives. If you are to share in its secrets, you must understand the burden it carries." With a wave of his hand, Cale summoned another projection, a massive vault filled with artifacts, relics, and technologies from civilizations long gone. Some items glowed with benign energy, while others exuded a menacing aura that made the crew uneasy. Among them was a sleek, weapon-like device similar to the one Cale had shown earlier. Its presence dominated the display, drawing everyone's attention. "What is that?" Lisa asked, unable to tear her eyes away from the ominous object. "It is called the Shard of Annihilation," Cale explained. "A relic of unimaginable power, capable of unraveling matter at a fundamental level. Many have sought to wield it, believing it would grant them dominion over the stars. All who tried were consumed by their ambition." Jake scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Sounds like a load of doom and gloom nonsense." He muttered under his breath. "If it's so dangerous, why keep it around?" Cale fixed him with a piercing stare. "Because destruction is part of existence," he said gravely. "To erase it entirely would be to deny the lessons it teaches. The shard remains here as a reminder of what happens when power falls into the wrong hands." Ryan stepped forward, his expression serious. "We don't want the shard," he said. "We came here seeking understanding, not weapons. But if you're willing to share your knowledge, your history, your culture, we'd be honored to learn from it." Cale studied him for a long moment, his glowing eyes searching for any trace of deceit. Then, with a slow nod, he gestured toward the vault. "Very well," he said. "But remember, knowledge is a double-edged sword. Use it wisely or suffer the consequences." The crew exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through them. They had passed the tests, earned Cale's reluctant approval, and gained access to an archive brimming with untold wonders. Yet they couldn't shake the feeling that greater challenges lay ahead. The galaxy had feared humanity's arrival, and now humanity had been given the chance to prove those fears unfounded. As they prepared to explore the vault, Ryan turned to his crew, his voice steady and resolute. "This is just the beginning," he said. "Whatever we find here, we'll face it together. Let's show them that humanity isn't defined by its past, but by its potential." With that, they stepped forward, ready to uncover the secrets of the megastructure and write a new chapter in the story of their species. The vault stretched endlessly before the crew of the Solace, its vast interior illuminated by a soft, ethereal glow. Row upon row of artifacts lined the walls, each one encased in shimmering energy fields that seemed to hum with latent power. Some items were small and unassuming, a crystalline orb no larger than a fist, a jagged shard of obsidian-like material, but others were massive, towering structures covered in intricate carvings and symbols. The air was thick with an almost palpable sense of history, as though the relics themselves whispered stories of civilizations long gone. Captain Ryan Cole led the way, his boots clicking softly against the smooth metallic floor. He moved cautiously, his eyes scanning the room for anything that might pose a threat. Though Cale had granted them access to the archive, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not just by Cale, but by the very artifacts around them. Each step felt like walking through a minefield where one wrong move could trigger disaster. Lieutenant Lisa Hart followed closely behind, her tablet in hand as she recorded every detail. Her curiosity was insatiable, and she marveled at the sheer diversity of the collection. "This is incredible," she murmured, her voice filled with awe. "Every piece here represents a different species, a different era. It's like stepping into a museum of the galaxy." Jake Monroe, ever the skeptic, trailed along reluctantly. His arms were crossed over his chest, and his expression was skeptical. "Yeah, sure, it's impressive," he grumbled. "But how do we know? These things aren't dangerous? For all we know, one of these trinkets could blow us all to pieces." Samantha Brooks walked beside him, trying to lighten the mood. "Relax, Jake," she said with a small smile. "If they wanted to kill us, they would have done it already. Besides, isn't this what we came for? To learn?" Jake shot her a sideways glance but didn't respond. Instead, he focused on scanning the room, his sharp eyes catching every flicker of movement. Despite his gruff exterior, he wasn't entirely wrong to be cautious. There was something unsettling about the vault, a quiet tension that lingered, in the air like a storm waiting to break. As they ventured deeper into the archive, Cale reappeared, his holographic form materializing beside them. His presence was both comforting and unnerving, a reminder of the gravity of their situation. "You may examine the artifacts," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But do not touch them unless instructed. Many of these relics are unstable, and even the slightest interaction could have catastrophic consequences." Ryan nodded, acknowledging the warning. "Understood," he said. "We'll proceed carefully." Cale gestured toward a nearby pedestal, atop which rested a small glowing cube. Its surface shimmered with shifting patterns, resembling liquid light frozen in time. "This is the first artifact I wish to show you," he explained. "It is called the Echo Chamber. Within it lies the collective consciousness of a civilization known as the Velari. They were philosophers, poets, and dreamers who sought to preserve their essence beyond death." Lisa leaned closer, her fascination evident. "What happened to them?" she asked. "They vanished," Kyle replied simply. "Their bodies perished, but their minds endured within the echo chamber. If you listen closely, you can hear fragments of their thoughts, their memories." Curiosity got the better of Lisa, and she activated the device using a control panel embedded in the pedestal. At first, nothing happened. Then, faint whispers began to fill the air, growing louder and clearer until they formed coherent sentences. The voices spoke in a language none of the crew recognized, yet somehow they understood the meaning behind the words. Tales of love, loss, triumph, and despair unfolded before them, painting a vivid picture of a people who had once thrived among the stars. "It's beautiful," Samantha whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. She felt overwhelmed by the raw emotion conveyed through the echoes, as though she were standing amidst the Velari themselves. Jake, however, remained unmoved. "Great, so we've got a cosmic mixtape," he muttered sarcastically. "What's next? A paperweight that tells fortunes?" His comment earned him a glare from Lisa, but Cale merely smiled faintly. "Not everything here serves a practical purpose," he said. "Some artifacts exist solely to preserve knowledge or evoke emotion. Others, however, hold immense power." He turned and gestured toward another display, this one containing a sleek, dagger-like object encased in a transparent field. "This is the Blade of Eternity," Kyle continued. "Forged by the Zenari, it was said to grant its wielder immortality. However, those who used it soon discovered that eternal life came at a terrible cost. Madness, isolation, and eventual self-destruction. Ryan studied the blade with a mixture of fascination and unease. "Why keep it here if it's so dangerous?" he asked. "To remind us of our limitations," Kyle replied. "Power unchecked leads to ruin. The blade serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that mortality is not a curse but a gift." The crew absorbed the lesson silently, reflecting on the implications. Humanity had always sought ways to conquer death, to extend life indefinitely. But hearing the fate of the Zainari gave them pause. Perhaps there was wisdom in accepting the natural order rather than striving to defy it. As they moved on, Kale guided them to a large cylindrical structure at the far end of the vault. Unlike the other artifacts, this one was active, its surface pulsating with a rhythmic glow. Inside, swirling clouds of energy danced in mesmerizing patterns, forming shapes that resembled galaxies, nebulae, and stars. It was as though the universe itself had been captured within the cylinder. "This is the Nexus Core," Kale announced, his tone reverent. "It contains the essence of creation itself, a fragment of the primordial force that gave birth to existence. My people believe it holds the answers to questions we have yet to ask." Lisa approached the Nexus Core, her scientific instincts kicking in. She scanned the object with her tablet, recording every detail. "Can we study it?" she asked eagerly. "Learn how it works?" Kale hesitated before answering. "The Nexus Core is beyond comprehension," he admitted. "Even we do not fully understand its nature. To tamper with it would be unwise." Ryan placed a hand on Lisa's shoulder, gently pulling her back. "Let's leave it alone," he said firmly. "Some things are better left untouched." Though disappointed, Lisa nodded in agreement. She knew Ryan was right. Some mysteries were too great to unravel without risking unintended consequences. As the tour continued, the crew encountered countless other artifacts, each one more fascinating than the last. There was the Orb of Reflection, a mirror-like sphere that showed not your physical appearance, but your innermost fears and desires. There was the Chrono Key, a device rumored to manipulate time itself, though its use had been forbidden for centuries. And then there was the Shard of Annihilation, the weapon Kale had warned them about earlier. It sat in its own chamber, isolated from the rest, its dark energy radiating an aura of menace. Despite Kale's warnings, Jake couldn't resist sneaking closer to the shard. He peered through the energy field, studying its sleek design with a mix of awe and trepidation. "Imagine what we could do with something like that," he mused aloud. "We'd never have to worry about threats again." Ryan heard him and immediately intervened. "Stay away from it, Jake," he ordered sharply. "We're guests here, and we need to respect their rules. Don't even think about touching it." Jake backed off reluctantly, muttering under his breath. But the seed of temptation had been planted in his mind, and it would take root sooner than anyone expected. By the time they reached the end of the vault, the crew was visibly drained. The weight of what they had seen, the beauty, the tragedy, the sheer magnitude of knowledge was overwhelming. They gathered near the entrance, taking a moment to process everything before speaking. "We've learned so much," Lisa said, her voice tinged with excitement. "This is going to change everything for humanity. We can use this knowledge to advance science, medicine, technology." "But at what cost?" Ryan interrupted, his tone somber. Kale was clear. "This isn't just a gift. It's a responsibility. We have to be careful how we use what we've learned." Samantha nodded in agreement. "He's right," she said. "We can't let greed or ambition cloud our judgment. This knowledge has the potential to unite us or tear us apart." Jake rolled his eyes, clearly unconvinced. "You guys worry too much," he said dismissively. "If we play our cards right, we can make humanity unstoppable. Why settle for mediocrity when we can aim for greatness?" Ryan fixed him with a stern glare. "Because greatness without morality is tyranny," he shot back. "We're not here to dominate the galaxy. We're here to prove that we can coexist peacefully, that we've grown beyond the mistakes of our past." Before Jake could respond, Kale appeared once more, his expression unreadable. "Your time here is nearly at an end," he said. "Consider carefully what you take with you and what you leave behind. Remember, knowledge is power, but power must be tempered with wisdom." With that, he gestured toward the exit, signaling that their visit was over. The crew exchanged glances, each lost in their own thoughts as they prepared to leave the vault. They had gained access to wonders beyond imagination, but they also carried the burden of deciding how to use them. The galaxy had feared humanity's arrival, and now humanity faced the ultimate test, proving that it deserved a place among the stars. The Solace hummed softly as it prepared to depart the megastructure, its engines powering up for the journey back to Earth. The crew moved about the ship with a mix of excitement and exhaustion, their minds still reeling from the wonders. and warnings they had encountered in the vault. Each member of the team carried something different away from the experience. Lisa Hart clung to her notes and recordings, eager to share the knowledge they had gained. Samantha Brooks felt a renewed sense of hope that humanity could rise above its flaws. Jake Monroe harbored a simmering restlessness, his thoughts lingering on the shard of annihilation. Captain Ryan Cole stood on the bridge, staring out at the colossal structure through the viewscreen. Its shimmering surface seemed to pulse faintly, as if bidding them farewell or issuing a final warning. He couldn't shake the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. They weren't just returning home with data and discoveries. They were bringing back choices, decisions that would shape the future of their species. What they did next mattered more than anything they had accomplished so far. As the ship drifted toward the aperture leading out of the megastructure, Cale's holographic form appeared one last time. His glowing eyes locked onto Ryan's, and for a moment there was silence. Then he spoke, his voice resonating deeply within the confines of the solace. "You have seen much," Kyle began, his tone measured but tinged with unease. "But what you do not yet understand is the true nature of this place, and why my people guard it so fiercely." Ryan frowned, turning to face the being fully. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You've shown us your archive, your relics. Haven't we earned your trust?" Kyle hesitated as though weighing how much to reveal. Finally, he nodded slightly. "Trust is fragile," he said, "and what I am about to tell you may test it further. This structure is not merely a repository of knowledge. It is a prison, a containment vessel for forces beyond comprehension." The words sent a chill through the crew. Lisa stepped forward, her tablet forgotten in her hands. "A prison?" she echoed. "For what?" Cale gestured toward the distant core of the megastructure, where the Nexus core pulsed faintly. "For the remnants of those who sought to wield power without restraint," he explained. "Civilizations that crumbled under the weight of their own ambition. Their weapons, their technologies, even fragments of their consciousness remain here, sealed away to prevent their return." Jake scoffed, shaking his head. "So you're saying this whole thing is just a glorified lockbox? Why not destroy the dangerous stuff instead of keeping it around?" "Because destruction is rarely absolute," Cale replied gravely. "Some things cannot be undone. To erase them entirely would risk unleashing chaos into the void. Here they are, contained but only barely." Ryan's brow furrowed as he processed the revelation. "And the shard of annihilation?" he asked cautiously. "Is that part of what you're guarding?" Cale's gaze hardened. "Yes," he admitted. "It is among the most perilous artifacts in existence. Even now it strains against its bindings, seeking release. If it were to fall into the wrong hands..." He trailed off, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. Lisa shuddered visibly, clutching her tablet tighter. "Why show us these things if they're so dangerous?" she demanded. "Why let us see the Blade of Eternity, the Chrono Key, the Shard? Why give us access to tools that could destroy us, or worse?" Cale regarded her silently for a moment before answering. "Because ignorance is no shield," he said. "To deny you knowledge would be to condemn you to repeat the mistakes of those who came before, but understanding comes with risk. Whether you choose to heed the lessons or ignore them is your burden to bear." The room fell silent as the crew absorbed his words. Ryan glanced at his team, seeing a mixture of determination, fear, and uncertainty etched on their faces. He knew the decision ahead wouldn't be easy. Humanity had been given a glimpse into the galaxy's greatest treasures and its darkest secrets. How they responded would define their place among the stars. Finally, Ryan turned back to Cale, his expression resolute. "We'll take what we've learned and use it wisely," he promised. "Not to dominate, but to grow. To build bridges, not barriers. We won't make the same mistakes." Kyle studied him for a long moment, his glowing eyes searching for any trace of deceit or arrogance. When he spoke again, there was a hint of approval in his tone. "Then go," he said simply. "Prove us wrong. Show the galaxy that humanity can be trusted." With that, the aperture widened, allowing the Solace to pass through. As the ship emerged into open space, the megastructure behind them began to fade, its shimmering surface dimming until it vanished entirely. For a moment, the crew sat in stunned silence, processing everything they had witnessed. Back aboard the Solace, tensions began to rise once more. The revelations about the megastructure weighed heavily on everyone, but none more so than Jake Monroe. Since leaving the vault, he had grown increasingly withdrawn, his mind consumed by thoughts of the Shard of Annihilation. He paced the corridors, late at night replaying Kale's warnings in his head, but instead of caution, they fueled his ambition. One evening, while the rest of the crew slept, Jake slipped into the engineering bay. The room was dark except for the soft glow of monitors and diagnostic panels. He pulled up schematics of the megastructure on one of the screens, studying them intently. His fingers hovered over the controls as he considered the possibilities. If he could somehow replicate the technology used to contain the Shard, or, better yet, harness its power, he could ensure humanity's dominance in the galaxy. The idea thrilled him, drowning out any lingering doubts. Unbeknownst to Jake, Lieutenant Lisa Hart had noticed his erratic behavior during the day. Her sharp instincts told her something was off, and when she spotted him sneaking into the engineering bay, she decided to follow. She crept quietly, staying just out of sight as she observed him working feverishly at the console. "What are you doing, Jake?" she asked suddenly, stepping into the light. Jake froze, startled. He spun around, his face flushed with guilt. "Nothing," he snapped defensively. "Just running some diagnostics." Lisa crossed her arms, her expression skeptical. "At this hour? On what? You know we're supposed to report anything unusual to Captain Cole." "It's nothing important," Jake insisted, avoiding her gaze. "Go back to bed, Lisa. You're overreacting." But Lisa wasn't convinced. She stepped closer, peering at the screen. Her eyes widened as she recognized the schematics displayed there. "Is that the Shard?" she gasped. "Jake, are you insane? Kale specifically warned us not to mess with that thing." "It's not messing if we figure out how to control it," Jake shot back, his voice rising. "Think about it, Lisa. With that kind of power, we'd never have to worry about threats again. No wars, no invasions, nothing. We'd be untouchable." Salte stared at him in disbelief. "That's exactly why we shouldn't touch it," she exclaimed. "Don't you get it? That's how every other civilization ended up destroyed. Greed and arrogance blindsided them, and look where it got them." Jake clenched his fists, frustration boiling over. "You don't understand," he growled. "This isn't about greed. It's about survival. About making sure humanity doesn't end up like those failures Kale showed us." Before Lisa could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed and automated voices announced an unauthorized transmission attempt. Jake cursed under his breath, realizing too late that his actions had triggered the ship's security protocols. Within seconds, Ryan and the rest of the crew arrived, drawn by the commotion. "What's going on here?" Ryan demanded, his voice sharp with authority. Lisa stepped forward, pointing accusingly at Jake. "He was trying to access classified data from the megastructure," she said. "Specifically, information about the Shard of Annihilation." All eyes turned to Jake, who stood defiantly despite the mounting pressure. "I was just exploring options," he muttered sullenly. "We can't afford to sit on our hands while others decide our fate. We need to take control of our destiny." Ryan's expression darkened. "By risking everything we've worked for?" he countered. "Do you have any idea what you've done? If Kale finds out—" "He won't," Jake interrupted. "Not if we keep quiet. All I needed was a little more time." "That's enough," Ryan snapped, cutting him off. "You've jeopardized this mission and possibly humanity's standing in the galaxy. From now on, you're confined to quarters until we reach Earth. Is that understood?" Jake opened his mouth to argue but thought better of it. Instead, he stormed past the group, muttering angrily under his breath. The tension in the room lingered long after he was gone, a stark reminder of the stakes they faced. Later that night, Ryan sat alone in his quarters, staring at a holographic projection of the megastructure. He replayed Kale's final words. In his mind, prove us wrong. Show the galaxy that humanity can be trusted. The responsibility felt overwhelming, but he knew they had no choice but to rise to the occasion. Failure wasn't an option, not when the fate of their species hung in the balance. As the Solace continued its journey home, the crew grappled with the lessons they had learned and the dangers they had narrowly avoided. They had proven themselves, capable of passing Kale's tests, but the real challenge lay ahead. Could humanity wield knowledge without succumbing to temptation? Could they resist the lure of ultimate power?